You're live.
So hello, welcome to our senior project presentation. We're Team MediVol, an interval inventory management system. I'm Sean Clark.
Anthony Krekus. I'm Bill Beers.
I'm Michael Tuning at Global Coordinator. So I'll go over our agenda for today. So we'll be going over who is Interval, our sponsor, why they need our senior project product, our brief product overview, requirements we've gathered, the tools that we use, our methodology, our current status, what we'll be doing in the future, and any questions that you may have. So briefly, who is Interval? Interval is a nonprofit organization based here in Rochester that collects unused medical supplies and redistributes them to third world countries. They have two warehouses currently, one in their main office in Wheaton and one in Clinton. And they have a volunteer system where volunteers can come in every 2 weeks and help them sort through the inventory that they collect every day. So why does Interval need our product? Currently, so this is a quote from our sponsor, the info we keep track of works well, however, how we keep track of it does not. So Interval currently keeps track of all their inventory of the medical supplies in Google Docs and Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. They found this very repetitious when they were updating, and it was very error-prone in that any data they entered, although they could validate it, they had some trouble validating other people as well. And then they couldn't establish a common name for the items that they entered. So how our product helps them is through the following product features. So our product will define a new process for them and help them manage their inventory better. So our product will feature box creation and management so that when they sort through the inventory, they can create boxes in our system and add them to the database. They can add new items to the database, so when they create these boxes, they can note these items are in the box. They can create orders so that when they ship to the third world country, they can track where the shipment is and what number of boxes are in there. Transaction and inventory reports so that the management of Interval can generate reports for grants and then they can also import and export data so that when they have a third-party integration, they can quickly integrate as well.
All right, thanks, Sean. So now you've heard about that, I'm going to talk about the requirements and how we listen from the customer. So when we first received the project proposal document, we had a lot of questions, and there were some things that we thought were a little vague. So we had the kickoff meeting with the two project sponsors, and that was really useful because we got a lot of our questions answered, and we were also able to limit the scope a good amount. Initially, the scope was very wide. For example, one of the features they wanted was a mobile website and scanning barcodes on a mobile phone, and then we found out that only one user of the system has a mobile phone. So it wouldn't have been very useful for them. So we were able to eliminate some scope that wasn't useful and focus on what would actually be useful for them. After that, we had a good idea of what the product was, but we were still kind of hazy on the details and how the workflow actually works in the warehouse. So we went to the Wheaton location and talked to the main person in charge of that warehouse, Linda, and we got a good overview of their workflow. And we came in with a lot of questions, but actually just talking to them, we were able to generate even more questions to ask them and got answers back. So after that, I think we had pretty good ground to stand on as far as requirements-wise. So from that point on, we just had weekly meetings with the project sponsor, and in those meetings we would show them things like wireframes or examples of the product, and also just ask them questions. And we kept all of our questions in a Google Doc, so they can go online anytime they want to and look at the open questions and then put the answers in there at their convenience. And then one of the other things that we did was user testing, and then Mike will talk about that in the future. But from this point on, the user testing is the main way we are going to elicit more requirements And now I want to talk about when we chose to switch from focusing on requirements to focusing on development. In our first 2 sprints, we were mainly focused on requirements more than development. And then at the 3rd sprint, we switched focus to development. And the reason we did this is because we were generating wireframes and interactive web pages that they can test. But after the first iteration of these wireframes, we found that we weren't getting much more feedback than the first iteration. So as we were putting more effort in, the accuracy of our requirements that we came up with wasn't really changing much. So that's why we decided to go into development at that time. So now I understand that. I just want to go over the tools that we're going to be using. So we're going to write the application, or we are writing it in Python. And the reason we chose Python is because the product sponsor requested it. They are familiar with Python, and it would be very helpful for them in the future if they want to do Metasign or make any changes. And then we did research, and we found Django, and found this actually worked perfect for our project because it's a web framework and it works well with databases, which our project is now heavily on. So Django also helped us with the design as well because with Django framework, you really just follow their framework and their custom, so it wasn't as much design on our part, so it really expedited that part of the process. Another library we're using for Python is ReportLab, and this library allows us to generate barcodes very easily. So this is a very helpful library because we have to reinvent the wheel doing that, so that was able to help us. And then we also used the grant, if anyone's familiar with it, but it's a really cool tool that allows you to create scripts to launch a virtual machine. So everyone in the project is using the same grant script, and when they start their environment, they run the script and brings up a virtual machine that they'll develop in. So limit any problems that you might encounter where it's working on one person's machine, not working on another, or having trouble setting up on this computer. For example, when we went to do the user testing, we were able to get the application up and running in a minute or 2 on the computer they gave us because we were able to use this grant script to launch the virtual machine. And the last tool I want to just go over real quick is GitHub. This one we're using for our repository. It's pretty standard, but one cool thing that we're doing is code reviews. So any pull requests that come in have to be reviewed by at least one person to get merged into master. And this is a big help because I know that every request that's came in has been reviewed, and we've found at least one bug each request. So there's a lot of bugs that we've already eliminated by using code reviews. So now I pass on to Bill, and he's going to be talking about methodology.
So as it was kind of alluded to, we had not the most stable requirements up front, so we decided that Scrum would probably be a good fit for us. It would allow us to kind of start with what we had and create a basic system on which we could spend time iterating and developing, refining, so that it would be closer to what the sponsor wanted. Currently, we're working with 1-week sprints. We're doing, every week we'll sit down with a planning meeting in which we'll plan out what we're going to work on for the next week. After that, every day we'll be working on this, executing on this plan, and we'll have daily sprint meetings. We do the daily stand-up every day just to figure out where people are at, if anybody's got any blocking issues, and if they do, how can we remove them. At the end of every week, we'll take some metrics, we'll do a retrospective, look at the sprint, go what went well, what went didn't, and how can we make sure that we're working better next week. Currently, for sprint planning, we're allocating about 4 to 5 points per person per sprint. This gives us, we figure about a point is worth somewhere around 2 hours of work. This gives us a little bit of a buffer because we've seen that we're kind of notorious for underestimating how hard tasks are and how long they're going to take. So it gives us a little more wiggle room than, say, 5 or 6 points would. We did end up starting with a 2-week sprint at the beginning of this. We did 2 2-week sprints. We noticed that we were kind of procrastinating a little bit. We didn't feel it was the most efficient way to spend our time. And after reviewing some data, we switched to a 1-week sprint. And This is kind of our metrics. These are our burn down charts from our second sprint and our sixth sprint. The second sprint on the left is going to be, it was a 2-week sprint. At the beginning of the first week, we kind of did a little bit of work, and then at the end of that first week, we did some more work, and then we kind of put stuff off and did a lot of work at the end of the second week. In sprint 6, you see kind of a similar pattern of doing a little bit of work up front and then a lot of work at the end. However, the difference here being when we switched from a 2-week sprint to a 1-week sprint, we wanted to see if we were actually able to commit to the same amount of workload, and we did. We found that we were able to basically double our velocity just by adding another deadline in between. It forces us to procrastinate less and get more done, and it's really helped us with our productivity. The other thing that I wanted to go over, as Anthony mentioned, we use code reviews. This graph shows on the blue line the number of submitted code reviews that we have per week. You notice that we kind of started off low and then we've been gradually up climbing as we've been becoming more familiar with Django, more familiar with the system, and as we're getting more done. We're breaking down tasks a little bit more efficiently, and we're seeing more of our tasks come through as commits. And this is really exciting. We're really glad to see that we've been able to kind of just ramp up continuously. Additionally, you see the red line is the number of reviews we have, and this one really makes me happy because we see for most of the tail end of the graph, we're seeing about 2 reviews on each commit. This means that either 2 sets of eyes are looking at a commit and going, yes, this is fine, we don't have any problem with this, or we're seeing, on average, somebody taking a look at a commit going, hey, this isn't quite right, what about this scenario? The original committer will go in, fix the change, and then we have a second review come through to make sure that we're eliminating the bugs before they even get into the master branch. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike to kind of look at how our UI has evolved.
Right. So this is kind of just to show how our iterative development is actually working well for us. So this is the create box page where you can add items to a box. And this is being added to the inventory. So you can see how in the beginning we just start with a sketch, and this is what we're thinking about having on the page, maybe where we're going to put it, and we can bring this to the sponsor or the user and say, hey, this is what we're thinking, and they can look at it and say, well, maybe this shouldn't be on this page, or maybe we don't use this, how do you think we do? So then we could go back and iterate on it, maybe next sprint, or maybe in the same sprint, and create a mock-up. And that's the middle picture here. And this is a better idea of what it's going to look like maybe after we talk to the sponsor and change some things. It's still not a final product, but we could go back to them about it. And lastly, we have this kind of interactive mock-up where it's not functional, but they can play with the UI and say, like, this doesn't react how I expected it to, or something like that. And after iterating on this, it leads to something like this, which is our current page for creating boxes. And you can see it's got a lot of the same core ideas, but it's just a bit nicer to look at, more usable, and just really shows how we iterate on everything. And also you can see how we actually took that one page and split it up into 2 slips. So we're not just shoving everything on one page for them to look at. So we did this usability test. We actually went to the warehouse and had real users test it. And somebody actually said to us, this is really simple and easy to use. I can't wait to break open the champagne. And so they've been waiting for this for a while. So they're really excited about it. And the feedback is really positive. So it's just another testament to how well iterative development works and how getting the customer input early really helps out. And of course, it wasn't perfect. We did have feedback saying, like, for example, the search field, they were like, oh, I expect to be able to hit enter in this, and they should select the first item that comes up. So we're like, okay. But then we also get feedback that they don't give to us, but that you just get from watching them. For example, on that second page, there are some radio buttons, and just from watching them, you can see like 2 or 3 of the users went to click the button and just missed it. So we're like, okay, now we have to make those bigger. So it was really valuable for us to do this, and definitely something that we're going to do for the future features. So then now Boom's going to talk about the current status.
All right, so what we currently have completed is the create box. As you can see, we did the usability testing on it, and we have a few of the minor tweaks that we had to do on it, but that's pretty much what we have done on the create box system. And we'll also finish our first iteration on the catalog, import, and order system. These are the, so right now the user are able to view the box, the items they have on the database. They're able to import old data, and they're also able to create orders from the boxes. So we're still working on the UI elements for these things, but they're actually they're functional right now. So what we have planned for the future is that we'll iterate more on the catalog, import, and order system. Along with that, we would start and complete the notification and report system that was requested from the users to make them easier to look for boxes that are going to expire or reports on what are sold. We are also going to start on doing integration testing between the different modules and doing regression testing on the whole system so that each build would have a user acceptance testing run on it. We're also starting the user manual for the projects because the sponsor would have to maintain the system, and they would like to have manuals so that it would be easy for them. And lastly, we would do deployment and user training. We would go in and train the user on how to use the system, and along the way collect feedback from them and improve along the way how to make the system easier for them. Lastly, do we have any questions?
Can you go back to your sprint rundown charts?
Absolutely.
So you're allocating, you said, points to people working, to developers?
Yes.
How's that related to the points that you assign the user story?
We're assigning the points, the user story, based on how long we think it's going to take as an estimation tool. So if we thought that a task was going to take somewhere around between 6 and 8 hours, we'd say that that was probably looking at a 4-point task.
Okay, and then how's that working for you?
It's been working reasonably well. Our estimations traditionally have been a little bit low. We'll assign things at one point when it really kind of was closer to a 2-point task, and sometimes we'll assign 2-point tasks instead of them being recognized as a 3-point task. So we see traditionally that we've overcommitted at the beginning of our sprints, and we don't quite deliver on everything that we committed to. But we feel that we are actually progressing at a good rate because we're seeing consistent levels of development.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You said you had daily stand-ups.
Yes.
Have you guys been? How does that work for you? Have you guys actually done that every day?
We don't quite do it every day, but we do have meetings every weekday. We don't meet on the weekends. We don't do daily stand-ups then. We usually, when we start our weekly meeting or a daily meeting, we will discuss okay, what did everybody do last night, or what you guys do over the weekend.
Has that helped?
Yes, it has. There's been a couple of times where somebody will be blocked on something, and just getting the recognition of hey, I can't quite do this yet because my CR is still in the backlog, and somebody go take a look at it, and it'll get done by the next day.
Has your analysis of the project so far had any impact on how they actually do the business?
I don't think so far, no, but maybe just in the process of putting stuff in these boxes, so it's part of what we're doing is kind of making the process a little better. But I don't think anything business yet.
The business end would be mostly in the reports that we're going to generate soon in the later development phase, because these reports would be used to ask for grants from the government to do further work for them.
So they can see oh, we shipped out this many tons of medical supplies. So that'll be like something that they'll be able to do.
I may have missed it. How are you managing your backlog and tools?
We use Trello for our backlog. Trello is an online board system that allows us to assign, we have a sprint backlog that we'll assign tasks to, and we'll assign people to those tasks and make sure that everyone's looking at 4 to 5 points, and then collectively, as a group, we're looking at about 20 to 25 points per sprint. And then as tasks are completed, we'll move them into the completed task list, and that way we can look back at the end of the sprint and say, okay, this is how much we originally committed to, this is what we got done, this is kind of what we didn't get done, why didn't we get this done, and do some analysis on that.
Do you get to subdivide cards when they're beyond the 8.4 points, or you're managing through the task?
Usually we create smaller tasks so that we can easily manage them without having to break them down anymore.
You can do subtasks, but it gets kind of confusing because they're all hidden in another task. So we usually just do different tasks.
I might have missed it. How do you guys address your risks?
One of our major risks and our major worries was that we were going to build something that wasn't what the project sponsor was looking for, or was what they thought they wanted, but wasn't quite exactly perfect for them. So we tried to use Scrum and more of an agile way of thinking to consistently iterate over our tasks so that if anything was wrong, we could catch it early and then change it immediately. Does that answer your question? Anyone else?
All right, let's thank the team.